Welcome to the Strength and Courage podcast, a podcast focused on helping you lead with strength and courage in every situation you face. The Strength and Courage podcast is hosted by Ben Thomas and Hassan Kibirango. The Strength and Courage podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Be to the World. Be to the World focuses on bringing fullness of life to the future of every child impacted by war. Stand with the millions of children in countries recovering from war so they can receive a transformative education. Start your journey as a Be to the World ambassador by making a monthly donation at www.betotheworld.org/donate. And now to Ben and Hassan for today's episode.
Well, friends, welcome to the Strength and Courage Leadership Podcast. I'm excited again to be joined by Hassan Kibirango and to learn from him as we talk through what it looks like to change and lead change within an organization and within our leadership. I heard a quote once that has really been a good gauge for me, and that's, when people are upset about changing, they're really saying, in other words, we don't want to grow. So when something's not growing, the opposite of growing is dying. And yet, so many times in organizations and people, we are so opposed to change, and yet we all want to grow as people and as professionals. So Hassan, I'm so excited to be able to talk with you today on this incredible topic. So let me just start off with asking, why is it important to learn about change?
Wow. Thank you, Ben. The importance of us learning about change is because it is a constant in our lives. It's always going to be there. It happens at different rates, different times for different people. I mean, for crying out loud, we're just probably pulling out of a 2-year pandemic that everything changed. For many things in an instant. And and that's what sometimes crisis does, is that it comes to shake things up.
Right.
And when things are shaken, both of us believe in the Bible, it says, when the foundations are shaken, what will the righteous do? I mean, I remember exactly where I was when the first case of COVID hit in Rwanda, March 14th, 2020. I remember the communication that came after that. It was a Saturday afternoon. They said we couldn't hold services the following day on Sunday. We didn't have a very good communication tool in this church that reaches over 2,000 people. I mean, it was a frenzy. I remember serving on the pastoral team there, the pastor calling us in and saying, okay, what do we do? How do we change this thing? How do we change our services from people coming in for a physical meeting into a different mode of services? And I remember Fabrice, who is in charge of the multimedia, having to literally adjust and take us to a place we had never been. I remember we were recording sermons in our homes using our phones. And then we'd send the videos to Fabrice and he would do some magic with them and then broadcast them. I mean, it was quite uninteresting, and that's just my world. And so change is one of those things, especially as a leader, we have to know that it's always with us, and we have to be able to deal with it appropriately. It's Kerry Newhoff, who is our favorite for the both of us. During the pandemic, he wrote something about what happens to leaders during crisis and how leaders respond. And he talked about a category of leaders. He called them frozen leaders. That stuff happens, disruption happens, they're not ready for it, they don't know how to deal with it, and they just freeze. They don't know how to move forward. They've been so used to a certain sense of routine and things working the way they are. And some leaders just freeze under disruption. Then he also talks about the second category, which is hesitant leaders. These are people who are saying, I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to see how much I can ride this wave. And they change. These leaders change, but usually they are more likely to only change as little as they have to. They will wait the storm out. And then he talks about the third category of leaders, and this is the kind of leaders that we all need to aspire to be, and that is agile leaders who are adaptive to change, because change is going to happen. And as a leader, we have to have the flexibility, we have to have the ability to pivot and to change when circumstances require us to, for the sake of the organization and the people that we lead. So it's important for us to learn about change, because change is with us. And I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, is it?
It really isn't. I mean, you think about in our lifetime, the major world events that have shaped our lives, right? So for us in this context, the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. What is Rwanda today, without that terrible, drastic, devastating impact, but then the lessons learned through that process, the leadership that's emerged, Rwanda rising out of the ashes, right? The Rwanda story today is radically different. Right? Imagine that the Rwandan leaders had not decided to change. Where would we be? Right? In my hometown of New York, 9/11.
Yes.
The impact that had, and the impact worldwide that's been felt as a result of 9/11, the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, yes.
Right? And so change, as you said, it is with us.
Absolutely.
Change is constant. And so for us as leaders, we have to take on a mindset that we are going to lead through change.
We're going to have to.
Yeah. Or you're going to have to find somebody else to lead, right? Like, because there is no staying still. And so I would just emphasize that to leaders out there. Change is hard. Can be hard, but that doesn't mean it's bad.
Yes.
We're recording today on February 28th, 2022. How different does the world view Ukraine this Monday than it did last Monday, February 21st, before Russia invaded Ukraine?
Wow.
Right? Like how fathers, mothers, former presidents and mayors are taking up arms to defend their nation and their homeland. Right? Like, what if their leadership said, no, we're not going to change. Let's just continue as normal. So you don't know the forces that will drive the change, but you can guarantee that as you even look back through the course of your life, just trace back the cycles of change. Trace back those monumental moments. And so is that every 3 years? Is that every 5 years? Is that every 10 years? What are those cycles?
True.
Right? And that's part of God's design. Even like nobody lives forever. There's life and there's death.
Absolutely.
Right? There's birth and there's burial. Right? And so it's even... I won't get to preaching, but like we all, right? We're given a new life in Christ.
Absolutely.
Right? The old is past, the new has come. Right? And so it's not something that I think we need to fear.
We just need to embrace
but
it.
something that we need to embrace and equip ourselves for. Because there's ways to be able to lead well and navigate well through change. And then there's ways that don't work so well. So why is it, Hassan, that you've seen leaders have such a hard time embracing change?
Yeah, because first of all, change is very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We dig deep, create foundations around a certain routine and a status quo of sorts, and routine feels good. So there's a sense of discomfort out of the status quo that change brings, that just it throws leaders off. The other thing that makes change difficult is change feels lonely.
Yeah.
Especially, for leaders, sometimes you feel you're the only one who is being affected. It's like, is anyone going through what I'm going through? People are, but because it can be a lonely place to be. The other thing about change that makes it difficult is that, it's interesting how quickly people are to revert back to the old comfort zone, because the comfort zone is comfortable, Yeah. And like you said, Ben, many people usually focus on loss when they think about change, rather than on what is there for me to gain. Because change might be hard, just like you said, but it's not always bad, because there's probably something that would gain out of change. And too much change can be resisted.
Yep.
Imagine going into meetings every week and saying, this has to change, this has to change. People come and say, hey, hold up. What is going on? Yeah, but change in and of itself is just, it's a disruptor of comfort, of norms, of routines. And that's why many leaders find it difficult to embrace change.
Absolutely. You know, I was telling you guys before we started of the community of praxis that I'm now a part of. And at our last meeting, Andy Crouch, who's the partner for theology and culture for Praxis, was sharing a devotional with us. And he said something that I hope that Andy writes a book about someday. But he said this, he said, managing the risks that no one else sees, that's what a leader carries. And that's the hidden vulnerability of leaders. Wow. You have to manage those risks that nobody else in the organization has to see, has to worry about. It's not even on anybody else's radar. But you as the leader, you know what those risks are. Maybe it's your cash flow projections, right? Maybe it's the opportunity threat of a new business or company coming in. Maybe it's, losses in sales that nobody else sees. And then okay, these are the risks. If I continue with this, where I might lose, what I might gain. But I want to carry this and still move the organization forward, right? And so for us, I think, so Andy Crouch defines that as hidden vulnerability
of leadership. Wow.
And I think that is such a great connector with change, because so many times we want to resist that, or we want to ignore it, or we want to pretend that, well, if I just keep doing these things, then this over here is going to get better.
Yeah.
Versus saying, okay, this is happening over there. Let me keep doing these things. Let me keep moving these people this way. But what's the path to be able to chart a corrective course, right? And so, leaders, I've been there. I think I feel like, the change that we've had to lead through from Susie's brain tumor in our personal life and what that meant, to moving to Rwanda, to leading Kicks, to launching Beat of the World, like the pandemic, all of those things, like we've had to learn how to
the kids to go to school in a different way in a pandemic.
That's right.
An entire school.
Yeah, we've had to embrace change, and I think my hair is thinning a bit as a result. I'm getting a few more grays in there as a result, but gosh, the lessons learned have been priceless. Just this morning, Hassan, I was able to text 3 of my friends that are going through different things, just words of encouragement.
Sure.
But I've been able to do that because I know what they're going through. I've walked some of those roads. And all 3, one in the U.S., one in Australia, another one in the U.S., the one in the first one, his family's navigating some really serious things. And he wrote back, he said, "Brother, I'm in my basement weeping. And this reminds me that God sees me."
Oh, wow.
Right? But would I have that gift to give him had God not asked us to, allowed us to, encouraged us to change? Right? So I would also say to leaders, like, think about change as like a different perspective. Not right or wrong, not different, but what is it that God wants to teach you in the midst of this change?
That will make you a better leader.
Yeah, better leader, better person, better, whatever. And don't lose sight of all the lessons God wants to teach you in the midst of that change. So, how have you personally dealt with change in your life and leadership?
Thank you for that question. Number one is that I have been through different phases of change. Some are seasons that I've, seen coming, prepared for. some have totally blindsided me, just like they have you and all the other leaders. But I have learned to anticipate change. And I've realized that it's going to come. I need to prepare for it. I mean, even that which comes without me knowing, I need to just have a posture of heart and mind to say, look, if things changed, how fast should I pivot towards it? So that sense of anticipation, because change is always going to happen. Then the other thing, as I've realized that through the different cycles of my leadership, that I've had to monitor the change and kind of keep a clear eye on the vision and say, look, this is the vision might not change, but how we get there will change. How do I now adjust and monitor myself as I lead through that change? So it's a very, very important thing. The other important thing for us as leaders to know, and things that I practice, is to be able to quickly adapt to change. Sometimes you can be in a frozen state or hesitant state, but that adaptability and a quickness to adapt to the change will really put us on the edge or ahead of the curve compared to other people. And talking about adapting quickly, I mean, I have seen different, we're talking about our church, how we quickly had to, literally in a day, we had to, I remember Fabrice, again, on that the very first Sunday, we had never thought would go online, at least as quickly as we needed to. We had not been prepared for it. I remember that first Sunday, I think that he brought in a proposal to say, look, just for us to get some breathing room, this Sunday, that was the day after the first case hit, we have to play a previous sermon and kind of put it on the airway so that now we can begin to see what to do moving forward. So that's the quick adaptability that we have to embrace. And you know what? One of the things I have learned to do is to enjoy change. Yeah. Not all change is enjoyable, but you realize, you know what? I can draw some joy even out of a desperate situation. Yeah. So I remember that time when we were all locked away, none of us were allowed to move. And it was a totally strange situation we're in. We're home. My wife and I said, we're going to enjoy this change.
Yeah.
We're not going to let it pass us by. I mean, we can't do nothing about it. We can't leave. For 50 or so days, we're locked up in a home, as everyone was in Rwanda. And we decided to draw some joy out of it. So every time we get the kids to bed at around 8 p.m., I remember we watched a movie every night. We had never, I think
that's right.
We watched like 2 years worth of movies in a couple of days. So we enjoyed the change because, I mean, you might as well enjoy it. Yeah. So
really we started new traditions.
You remember? New traditions at home. I know that you've been through a lot of change yourself, Ben, especially as a leader. What are some of maybe one or two things you could share with the leaders that you had to do in order to lead the change that you had to? Especially around Kicks. I remember getting the students online. How was that process for you, the process of change?
In a lot of ways, not very different than what you said, right? While you guys were gathering at church, we were gathering at school to figure out, church folks had to navigate one day a week of change, and then we had to navigate every day. And so, what was that going to look like? So, to be honest, like specifically with the pandemic, I had a great leader who was who was just kept an eye on like risks for us. And I remember he mentioned coronavirus at our leadership team meeting in January as, hey, something we probably want to pay attention to. Well, by February, I had, you're starting to see it in different places. And yet still no big impact here, no big impact in the US. Nobody's thinking that this is going to spread globally. Maybe China at that point, maybe Italy. I can't remember if it had really gotten to Italy yet at that point, but we began to prepare.
Wow.
And so we put out hand washing stations as a school and temperature checks. And I remember I had this business consultant that was helping us with the strategic plan say, Ben, what are you doing all this for? And I said, well, we're just getting ourselves ready. And we had also, I think we had also had like a case of mumps at school. So it forced, between mumps and then there was the Ebola spread in
the
Congo,
yes,
which was near our border. So all of those together had been like leading us in preparation. But by end of February, I had commissioned one of our academic leaders to say, hey, if we have to go online, what would we do? But again, we were thinking 2 weeks, just like everybody else, right? Like if you were thinking at all about it, you were thinking 2 weeks, and then life goes back to normal.
Yeah.
And so that Friday before March 13th,
so March 13th,
that Friday, we actually had 2 trainings for parents at school on what kicks learning continues was the tag phrase, what that was going to look like. And so we only had like 20 parents show up. But at a minimum, we had a manual. We were working through pros and cons, but we never anticipated what was ahead. So, and then in that, Hassan, like we tried to keep our core vision, right? Like not our company vision, right? Not our organizational vision, but our core vision is like what's in the best interest of student learning, right? That doesn't show up anywhere on our vision statement, but in our leadership team, right? We're a school. That's what we're about, student learning. So we try to design that program with the best interest of student learning. We mobilized quickly. I organized the board. That evening we were meeting as a board. I met with the leadership team that afternoon. We met again with the leadership team on Sunday. We gathered people not at school, but brought them into our home in shifts to walk them through what was going to happen. And all of this was by Sunday evening. I had spoken to face-to-face to all of our staff. Organized a plan for parents that we weren't going to do anything. Monday was going to be resource pickup.
And this is like Monday 16th of March.
So we organized resource pickup. We arranged, I think we sent somebody to Kibirango Market, got as many plastic bags as we could that we could write the kids' names on. We sent things home with them, and by Monday afternoon, everybody had the resources they needed. And then I knew we needed to have just a day for everyone to catch our breath. So we gave that to the teachers on Tuesday and to parents and everybody else. Because you also had people starting to exit the country.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
the airport was going to close on Friday.
Yes.
So you had to also walk through, you had families that were pregnant, needing to high risk. We had a few high risk pregnancies that were advised to not deliver. So you're doing all of those things. And you can't do it by yourself. Great team. Great team. Can't say enough about that team that did that. And so, but then by Wednesday, Kicks Learning Continues started. And we moved forward and we made adjustments.
Of course.
We didn't treat it like, we said, what are the most important things that need to be done? We ensured that every family had at least one device at home. And then we made pivots at the end of that year. Going into the next year, we learned from that and made more adjustments. It was anticipating, like you said.
And also changing quickly.
Adapting quickly, And, not taking time. The one thing I wish I had done differently, I wish I had given our staff on Monday, because I was feeling it in my heart. I don't think this is going to be a short-term thing. I wish I had given our staff a moment to grieve, to say, I'm not in the business of predictions, but I don't believe this is just a short-term thing. You may not be back in your classroom before the end of this school year. And I wish I had just given people the space to do that, on one hand. And then on the other hand, that might have been too much grief, right? Like everyone like needed to hear from me, hey, we're going, like this is what's happening, etc. So, so that's how we managed it. It's, I don't, kind of like you, I'm a early adapter to certain changes. But and and then I played that role kind of like between the U.S. Embassy and some of our community as well. So I'm counseling people on, they're trying to make decisions on
what should we do,
and so really, I had to really say what's best for your family. Like I had to put my desires to the side and say, what's best for your family, what's this situation, etc.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but great team. You had to lead quickly. And the other thing in that is we collaborated strongly with the heads of the two other large international schools in the city.
Sure.
So Sunday, I had lunch with them, and we were exchanging notes on
what's going to happen on your end.
What do you need? Are you in touch with Ministry of Health? Right, so it was leading kicks, but also finding help. Who else was doing this? I remember calling my best friend in the U.S. whose kids had been sent home, I think that Wednesday, and they had already been in like 2 or 3 days. I said, what did you learn? He said, Ben, they sent home packets. My son's done with them, and it's Saturday. So you were trying to learn from others as well while you were going through this, that maybe just even a day or two ahead of you. Yeah. Right. So those are a few ways that we navigated change. And I say we, like that was a collective team, parents, students, staff, leadership, like community effort was we.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Ben. I find that there's just a few principles that we need to learn even as we deal with this thing called change, especially as leaders. Number one is that when the need to change comes, we shouldn't embark on too many changes at the same time, because it can overwhelm us and overwhelm the people that we lead. And there's, for example, in your case at Kicks, is a lot was thrust upon you in a very short amount of time, and you needed to do quite a bit of changing. But I like the fact that you took a break just after sending out the packets on Monday or Tuesday. You said, okay, guys, let's process what just happened, so that now you could start schooling online on Wednesday. So we need to pace ourselves out if we have the chance to do so. But it's also good to identify, why do we need to change? Why do we want to change? Why is it important? And take the people we lead through that process and that conversation. If we change right now, these are the benefits of change. This is how well it will help the mission, and so on and so forth. And also it's important to sit and write out a few things. What are the benefits of change for me as a leader? What is this change going to benefit me, benefit the organization, benefit the people that we lead? And so it's just, sometimes it's a mental process. Sometimes we don't think about it when changes happen to us. We just somehow respond by default. But it's important to say, okay, we will draw any benefits out of this. And the thing about change and why we need to embrace change as leaders is we need to get to a place where we sit with that discomfort. Because it is a discomfort, but we have to sit with it until we ride that wave out. And so my encouragement to leaders, even as we close, is that part of leading change, especially leading with strength and courage around change, is knowing that there's going to be discomfort. You sit with the discomfort, and sometimes you have to be the shock absorber as the leader, so that there are less shocks to the people that you lead. and that's painful as a leader. But it's the place of leadership.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
It's the place of leadership. I remember you shared with me the story of having to decide whether to travel during that very sensitive period or not, and you were going through a lot in your mind. You're like, won't my team feel like I've abandoned ship and all that? And how once you arrived in the US, you had to call every staff member to tell them, I might not be here physically, but I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. And the place of leadership requires us to sit with the discomfort of change for the sake of the people that we lead and for the sake of the mission. And some change is going to require us to immediately change.
Yeah.
For some, it's going to require baby steps.
Yeah.
And that process to take its due course.
Yeah.
With the people. But bottom line is, it's part of leading with strength and courage in knowing that we must change.
Yeah.
When change requires us to, as leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. Hassan, thanks so much. This has been great. And as we close, what you said there, one area that I've really had to improve is one of those areas you just touched on, which is sharing with people the pros and cons of change. And if I could do some of my leadership over again, that honestly, Hassan, might be the biggest area that I would redo, is not just leading forward with change and vision, but being able to paint a picture of, hey, here's what this is going to require and here's why. So thanks for those encouraging words about change. And friends, wherever you're leading, let me close with this encouragement. God has you right where you're supposed to be. So until he releases you from that assignment or makes it clear that it's time for someone else to lead where you are, whatever the change that you need to go through, your organization or your family needs to go through, chances are God wants you to lead those people to that change in the same way that he called Joshua to lead with strength and courage, to lead them to the promised land. So as you listen to this, think through, where might your promised land be? And it's not going to be rosy. There's going to be battles that need to be fought, but embrace those battles, knowing that God is with you and he's called you to be strong and courageous. Thanks so much for joining us on the Strength and Courage Leadership Podcast as we looked at leading change. Hassan, thanks again for your insight and your wisdom. And friends, feel free to share these episodes. This is a really great one, and we're so thankful that you've joined us again today. God bless you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for joining us today on the Strength and Courage podcast. Please share this episode with your friends and tag us on social media. Ben and Hassan are active across Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You could follow Ben on Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Ben P. Thomas. You could follow Hassan on Twitter at Kibirango. Send us your questions via Twitter and we'll get back to you. Thanks to our sponsors at Be to the World. Visit www.betotheworld.org/donate to become a Be to the World ambassador today. Until next time, lead with strength and courage, because at least one person in this world needs you too.